that I call your name. Vice Chair Nick Horn, still in limbo somewhere. Councillor Kathy Deagle-Gammon.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Happy to be here.
Deputy Mayor Tim Oathit.
Good evening, Chair and colleagues.
Ryan Donato. Okay. Jordan Foster.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Gina Jones-Wilson.
Good evening, everyone.
Jacqueline Levert.
Good evening, everyone.
And Stacy Rutterham. Hello,
Hey.
Stacy.
Good evening, everybody.
Okay.
I'm having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, you seem to be freezing up a little bit there, but as long as we know you're there, I think we're good. Okay. We will go ahead with approval of the minutes of July 7th, 2021. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 7th?
So moved, Tim.
Tim Oathit moving. And is there a seconder, please?
I'll second. Jacqueline.
Okay, it's moved by Tim Oathit, seconded by Jacqueline Levert, that we accept the minutes of July 7th as circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? Okay, I'm calling for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. Okay, on to approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Are there any additions or modifications to the agenda, Clerk?
There are none, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So moved. Councillor Deagle-Gammon.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Diggle, you're one step ahead of me.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine, because I need a motion to approve the agenda, and Councillor Deagle-Gammon has done that. And can we have a seconder, please? A seconder for the agenda.
I'll second it, Gina Jones-Wilson.
Seconded by Gina Jones-Wilson. It's moved and seconded that we accept the agenda as circulated. Calling for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Contrary.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Calling for a declaration of conflict of interest. If anyone has a conflict of interest with either of the items that we're going to be looking at tonight, we ask you to declare it now. Hearing none, we'll move along. Consideration of deferred business, there is none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Has the clerk's office received any correspondence?
Yes, the clerk's office has received correspondence for item 712, and this has been circulated to the committee.
Thank you very much. We can consider that then when we are looking at that item. Petitions, none. Presentations, none. On to reports. Item 711, case 23512 is an application by FBM Limited to amend the development agreement for the property at Civic 27 and 65 Delridge Lane, Bedford, to define and add indoor commercial dog care facility to the list of permitted uses in the general commercial zone area. Okay, and we will have a presentation now from Paul Sampson.
Good evening,
Oh.
Madam Chair.
There you are.
Good
Hello.
evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm just going to share my screen and bring up the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Paul Sampson. I'm a planner with the Urban Applications Group. Case 23512 before the committee this evening is an application for development agreement amendments in the Bedford South development agreement area, and specifically for property, or for the property at 27 and 65 Delridge Lane in Bedford. So the applicant is FBM Architects. They're representing the property owner, who are Rainbow Development Holdings Limited, and the proponent is Sam Delory. So the location of the property is 27 and 65 Delridge Lane in Bedford. That's off 9 Mile Drive. And I'll just move along to show you the general location of the site. It's highlighted in red. There are 2 buildings on the subject property, and I'll just show a little more detail. So Delridge Lane is a private lane, which runs off of 9 Mile Drive and Larry Utek Boulevard. The star shows the building that is subject to the amendment, the proposed amendment, but the proposed amendment would apply to the entire property. And this is the location. This is the former location of the children's indoor play space at Civic number 27. So this view is from Delridge Lane. In this case, 9 Mile Drive would be to the right of the screen. So the existing development agreement is for the Bedford South Wentworth Estates agreement, which was approved a number of years ago. The existing development agreement allows for general commercial development on this site. So the general commercial development that are uses that are specified in the development agreement. And without getting into all the details, it's primarily retail uses, restaurants, offices, and commercial services. But it was determined that the dog daycare use would not be permitted under the existing agreement. So the proposed amendments to the agreement are to add a definition which clarifies what an indoor commercial dog care facility would be, and it would exclude overnight boarding, and it would exclude any outdoor space. So it's an indoor facility. And also it would be, that facility would be added to the list of permitted uses in the development agreement just for this site. And those are found in Schedule P of the existing agreement. So this is just a little bit about the proposal. This is Sam Delory of Dream Dog. And I believe Sam is present on the meeting tonight. If there are any questions that I can't answer. And as well, David Patterson of FBM is here. So if there's any questions that come up after the presentation for the applicant, I believe either one of them could respond. So in terms of the dog daycare, it's essentially it's a service that kind of fills the gap between kennels and in-home pet sitting. Again, it's indoors only and daytime and evening care. So so basically the building or the space would be soundproofed, fully enclosed. It would have facilities for elimination needs of the pets, and so therefore would cause no noise and no nuisance concerns. In terms of the services, again, 7 days a week, it would be basically daytime and evening, no overnight boarding. And the development agreement process allows for the ability to set specific hours and specific number of dogs, but in this case, it's likely not needed. It's an indoor facility, and it would operate the same as other retail or service businesses according to city and provincial bylaws. So likely not in need to specify specific hours, but as long as it's specified that it's daytime and evening and not overnight boarding. So the other services offered, self-grooming, and would also be retail component of accessory retail goods as part of the business. So in terms of public engagement, we did have a public information meeting virtually. It was on June 16th. There were about 16 members of the public in attendance, and 6 people spoke in favor of the proposal. In terms of the MPS policies and regulations in Bedford, the zone is the BSCDD, so it's the Bedford South Comprehensive Development District. And in the MPS, the site is designated as general commercial under the Bedford South Secondary Planning Strategy. And again, the existing site has 2 commercial buildings and parking areas. In terms of a little bit more specifics on the MPS policies, the general commercial policies specify, types of land uses and uses in the buildings. And then also talks about throughout the entire Bedford South Wentworth development, it identifies parks and open spaces and the types of roads, the transportation network, and the different uses of in the residential neighborhoods and the commercial uses. So these are the kind of general application of the policies, and specifically policy GC1 in the Bedford South Secondary Plan allows for the commercial designation and a variety of commercial goods and services and facilities. And it specifies a few things that should not be permitted, such as entertainment uses and automobile sales. So essentially, the policy is to support businesses which provide goods and services to people within the community. So this would fall under that. This proposed use would fall under those categories. So that's it in terms of, I just wanted to keep this short, but if there are any questions, again, of myself or of the applicant, they are in attendance. Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, I believe you're on mute, Anne.
I am. Unusual for me. Okay, Nick. Do you have any?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have any questions or comments?
No questions. I do have one comment. I think this is the way a dog park, dog daycare should be, and I think it fits well. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And we'll move along to Ryan Donato, who is not with us. And Jordan, you're next up.
Yeah, good, concise and to the point presentation. I see this as a service that benefits the community. So that's all I have to say. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Gina. I'm sorry, Gina, you're muted now.
I'm with Jordan. It's a service. I'm not sure why we needed a special one, but yeah, it's a service that's needed because there are so many dog owners in most of our areas now. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Jacqueline?
Yes, I'm a similar opinion. I think it's it's something that the community will be able to use, and I don't think it will disturb the neighbors. As far as I can see, if it's just indoors, I don't think that it would be of any concern to the people around there, because there's other businesses there. There's bars, there's a bar there, and there's a coffee shop and stuff in that area. So it's not like there's not people moving about and milling about in that area. So I see it as a good addition to that area.
Okay, thank you. Stacy. Oh, we've lost Stacy. Okay, we'll move along and maybe she'll come back. Kathy Diggle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I think it's a service I would like to partake of when we get another dog. I think it's a lovely proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Tim Oathit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've been involved with this file for quite a while now. And I want to send out a thank you, first of all, to Paul for getting this in time for this meeting. We didn't want to push this till September, so thank you, Paul. And I also want to commend Sam for her determination. She's been working on this now for at least a couple of years, and we ran into zoning issues and the sort of thing. And she and her dad and others have been keeping me up to date on the plans and just so passionate about her vision. Like others of you have said, I might have had a problem if this was, and we've dealt with other kennels and whatnot on this committee, and where you would have dogs of all sizes and overnight boarding and outdoor runs and whatnot. And if that was the case, I might have had some issues. But in this scenario, what Sam is proposing, this type of business, I have had no concerns. I've had no concerns expressed to me, and I'm quite happy to support it. I wish her well.
Thank you. Okay, and I have no comments to make there. I assume that when they say it's going to be soundproof, that will be sufficient to allow the other businesses to carry on the business without any problems. So, and did Stacy get back on? I saw another phone come up, but I guess not. Okay. Does would someone like to make a motion then regarding this?
Madam Chair, it's Tim. I'm happy to move that we recommend acceptance. I don't think I have any concerns or issues that I would want to amend that motion with. So I think the appropriate term is to just that we recommend approval.
Okay. Do we have a second?
So seconded, Nick Horn.
Oh, good. Nick. Okay, moved by Tim, seconded by Nick, that we recommend approval of the dog daycare as presented to us. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much to the proponent and her representatives for spending their time with us tonight, and we'll ask them to now close off their phones. Thank you. Okay, we have another yes, and I'm just trying to find out where I am in this thing because I seem to have mixed up my pages. Okay, here we are. Wouldn't want to do that. There, case number 7-1. No, I'm sorry. Case number 22267, Dartmouth Road and Wardour Street in Bedford. And we will have a presentation by Sean Gillis.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members.
Hello, Sean.
Hopefully my screen is sharing. Is that the case?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm still getting used to this, so.
We all
Thank
are.
you for that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Nick.
Yes.
Could I ask Andrea a quick favor to just email that slideshow Since I'm on the phone, I don't have internet and I
Oh,
can't look it up.
okay.
It's
I
Krista,
can
Nick.
get
I'll,
email on my phone though.
Yeah, it's Krista, Nick. I'll send that now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay. He should have that within a few seconds, so perhaps
Okay,
you'd
so
like,
we can wait a minute or two then? Is-
maybe Nick, you could let us know when you have that.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just hold on here for a minute until he gets that email through.
I had the other one in my email and I followed along, but this one isn't there. So
Okay.
May I ask a question? It's Jacqueline.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a question for Sean. This is we've had the 3 public meetings. So what is being presented, Chair, tonight is, I would imagine, the follow-up to those public meetings.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's similar to the public meetings. We can go through the background a little quicker and then open things up for discussion. It's really up to you, Madam Chair. I'm assuming that everyone was at the public meetings, so you've seen a lot of this 3 times, so I can move through it fairly quickly if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. If anyone has any questions, they can come back and ask you after you've made your presentation. So, and it
Okay.
is the same
There's
item that we
new
have.
information, but it's fairly similar for sure.
Yeah. Okay, how are you doing there, Nick?
refreshing every half a second.
It could take a while, you mean?
I don't know. Krista said she sent it, so you guys can move on. I have seen it a couple times. I just wanted to be fresh, and if anything was changed.
I think if you can hear it, it was.
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's a big email. That's the problem. That's why it wasn't sent out earlier.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we'll begin, and you can at least hear the presentation. And
thank you.
You were at the other meetings, so. Okay, Sean, we'll let you start.
Great, thank you. So as mentioned previously, this is a follow-up for the committee to discuss case 22267. And there were 3 nights of public information meetings held on May 26th, 27th, and May 31st. So with that in mind, I'll move through the materials relatively quickly. If we need to, we'll go back for clarification, and then we'll open it up for the committee to discuss. So a reminder of the area we're dealing with, a study area near Dartmouth Road and Wardour Street in Bedford. And this is the verbatim council direction on this development. So I'm going to point out some of the highlights that staff was directed to look at changes to enable low to mid-rise, mixed-use, multi-unit residential and commercial development in the study area. Subject to development, providing acceptable transitions to nearby properties, being pedestrian supportive, transit-oriented, and context-sensitive. So I'd really like to point out that from a staff point of view, discussion and thoughts and direction on especially the idea of transition and context-sensitive would be very much appreciated. So if you could keep that in mind, that would be great. We'll come back to it, of course. So we're going to look through the study area, some of the residential area near Dartmouth Road, Stone Terrace. This is Dartmouth Road itself and Wardour Street on the right, where this is looking outbound So towards Burnside, towards Dartmouth. The Chicken Burger and Sunnyside are behind you. This is across the street from what we just saw. So there's some office buildings and the Masonic Lodge in the area. This would be off Dartmouth Road on Main Street, some of the residential area again, a lot of trees, almost entirely single unit homes. Some more of Dartmouth Road. Wardour Street, showing the Wardour Center, which is an office building. And the notable location would be the Bedford Public Library. One of the proposals that we've received in the study area is for the parking lot behind the Wardour Center. And this is some of the property kind of on the far right that would be considered that is being requested for a multi-unit building on Wardour Street as well. This one fronts Dartmouth Road. And some more properties on Wardour Street. And Brook Street, which is off of Wardour. And these houses would be facing the Wardour Street parking lot, or backing onto, if you will. So again, going back to the study area, just to note that there is 2 proposals within the study area, and those properties are shaded in red, but we are looking at the broader area for policy. And although the proposals are for multi-unit buildings, council has said we can consider other options, such as townhouses, as a potential outcome. So the planning process to date is that the developers have requested to change the land use policy. Staff report and a regional council initiation happened in November of 2019. We had a public information meeting canceled on March 2020 because of COVID. There's a public survey, which the results of which are available on the website, and we'll discuss some more, from November 2020. And the public information meetings, the 3 of them, as you know, the members of this committee were there. That was held at the end of May in 2020. So a reminder of the planning documents that we're using in this case. There's a couple. There is the Bedford Municipal Planning Strategy, the Bedford Land Use Bylaw, and then at a more regional level, there is the HRM Regional Plan and the Integrated Mobility Plan. And while we're on this slide, I would like to remind or perhaps clarify to members that this is a different process than many of the ones you might see. You might see rezonings or development agreements like we just saw from my colleague Paul, and often they have very specific policy guidelines in the municipal plan. They have the policy already in place. In this case, what's different is that council has said, we're willing to look at changing the policy. So we can make many different approaches, whereas other things like a development agreement or a land use zoning, the policy is often much more set in stone. So if that's confusing, we'll go back to it. That's not a problem, but wanted to point that out, a key consideration in this case. So the current policy for the land use, in the Bedford Municipal Planning Strategy, so the local, I see a hand up. I can answer a question now if that works for you, Madam Chair. I believe you're on mute.
I would rather just go through the presentation and we'll do the questioning at the end. It's easier to know where we are then as far as time goes, okay?
Okay, that's great. We'll do it that way then. So this is showing the existing land use policy in the area. So every property in HRM has 2 identifiers on it. They have the MPS designation, and there's also the zoning. So in this case, the MPS designations, there's only two main ones in the study area. There's residential R, which you can see, and there's commercial C. And there is policy sets for both of those different designations. In the easiest approach, commercial allows commercial and residential allows residential. In this case, it's important to note that the Bedford Municipal Planning Strategy is set up so that these established residential areas with R, the policy is to keep them broadly similar and not to look at policy or zoning changes to allow higher density of uses. So something to keep in mind. And you can see the gray and the speckle. These are the two proposals, the two requests for changes to the zoning. So the back parking lot of the Wardour Center, which if you can see my mouse is down here, is zoned R, or excuse me, is designated R, as is the property on Dartmouth Road. The Wardour Center itself and some of those office buildings we saw earlier are designated commercial. And then there's a lot of R designation elsewhere in the study area and some institutional and parkland as well as we kind of move outside the study area. So moving on to the zoning, the main point here would be that the current zoning is residential single unit for most of the study area, with the exception of those commercial buildings. And the Bedford Municipal Planning Strategy would not allow a rezoning without changing the policy itself. So our SU is for residential single unit, and it sets out single unit only is the currently allowed land uses on those properties. The regional plan is set up and it guides growth across the region. And part of the goal of the regional plan is to put growth in existing communities. And those are called growth centers in many cases. So growth centers in existing communities, there's a couple of examples in Bedford. Sunnyside Mall is one and Mill Cove is another. So this would be an area where we would expect to see new growth at a higher density. And that's the regional plan direction. And so the regional plan is directing one thing, consider new growth within the Sunnyside Mall Growth Center. And the Bedford Municipal Planning Strategy is suggesting that residential and residential single unit is the appropriate use within this area. So once again, just coming back to the study area, Council has asked us to look at these proposals and consider how they could work, or if something else is appropriate, or potentially if no changes are appropriate. And once again, we've got two concrete proposals within there. So this would be the proposal, which is at Wardour and Dartmouth Road. A site plan showing how that would work. This is the proposal behind the Wardour Center, just off of Wardour Street. And again, a site plan showing the proposal. And another rendering. As mentioned at the public information meeting, we had a good response rate to these surveys. We received 103, and that's a 39% response rate, which is quite high. We're usually 10% is a pretty good response. And we've seen a lot of web page views as well, pretty much every month. And the surveys themselves, I guess if I were to, you heard many of these things at the public information meeting. And I think the expected nuisance outweighs the expected benefits would be one way to put it. Increased traffic, more on-street parking, loss of neighborhood character, increased population, noise, shade, and garbage. So it's not the only opinion. We did have some people saying that they would appreciate multi-unit buildings that they don't feel will be a concern, but the vast majority, somewhere probably around 80 plus to 90%, were against this proposal. And I think that was reflected in the public information meeting. So I don't think this is news to you folks. Just to go through those a little bit, this is a little bit more information from the public information meeting. So traffic, there's a couple of different things. There's the big concern that Dartmouth Road itself is very, very busy and crowded, and this will make that worse. There's a particular concern that left turns from Wardour Street onto Dartmouth Road will become even more difficult, and they're already frustrating in peak hours. And because of that, people are concerned that new residents will cut through the various side streets, Camden, Perth, Wardour Street, etc., through the neighborhood to get out to the Bedford Highway and the services they need. So that was one big concern that we've heard. This isn't an overarching hitting on everything, but this is kind of laying out some of the things we heard at the PIM and through the surveys. And this is to give a little bit more information on the current traffic volumes through those streets. And so on Camden Street, the average number of vehicles per day is 543. So Camden Street is a little closer to Dartmouth Road. Perth Street is 155 and 469 vehicles per day on Fort Sackville Road. And these are the latest numbers that we have, the count for these streets, just to give an idea. The 85th percentile speed gives you an idea of how fast people are traveling on that street. And so 45 to 30.
Sean, you seem to have frozen. We're not hearing you. Krista?
I still see him in there.
Yeah, he's there, but he's frozen.
Okay.
And we've lost his audio.
Okay. We'll just
Maybe
give
he's
it I was going to say we can give it a minute and see.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it looks like he's going to reboot and possibly rejoin.
Am I back on? I'm seeing
You are.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you are. Hey.
Awesome. Well, this is good. Let
Yeah.
me try again here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Is that working?
Yes.
So we were cut off as I tried to move to the
Traffic.
traffic. Okay. Gonna see if this will load up here. Okay, perfect. There we are.
There you are.
Is this showing up the traffic? So are we on the table with some traffic counts?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So I'll repeat this. Unfortunately, I might have said it, but I don't know when I cut out. So these are our newest counts. They were taken before COVID, and showing you an idea of the current, or I guess at that time, traffic volumes average on some of the streets nearby. We don't have a count for Wardour Street, unfortunately, but Camden, Perth, and Fort Sackville, the two higher ones, around 500 cars per day, and Perth Street lower. And the 85th percentile speed is to give you 85% of people are traveling at that speed or lower. So to give you an idea of how fast people are traveling, it is quicker on Camden outside of the school zone. So that's to give some context on some of the concerns about traffic. These are the trip generation estimates for the proposed developments. And this is from the traffic impact statements that were provided by professional engineers. And these are estimates as to how many peak hour trips will come from these units, these new developments, were they to happen as proposed. And you can see some of the numbers. So in the AM peak, the trip generation, 10 in and 15 out for the proposal behind the Wardour Center with 51 units. The PM peak, 19 coming in and 18 coming out. Similarly, 3 trips in, 10 trips out for the Dartmouth Road proposal, 10 trips in and 6 trips out in the PM peak. So that's to give a sense of what the estimates for number of trips in the rush hour is. There's going to be more trips than that in a day, but the traffic impact statements are done for rush hour only. So neighborhood character was another concern that was cited heavily, and a lot of things came up. Overall, the idea of this being a mature treed R1 neighborhood was definitely communicated, and larger buildings would disrupt that in a way that many residents do not like. And there's some other buildings in the area. The Scott Manor House is one of the oldest buildings in HRM and an important heritage site near the study area. The school is near the study area, and there's also a number of graveyards, cemeteries near the study area. And especially the Scott Manor House and the graveyards were cited a couple of times as being important parts of the community character in addition to that R1 neighborhood. So again, going back to some of the pictures that you've already seen, it's a pretty leafy neighborhood. There are generally no sidewalks. The pavement and the roads themselves tend to be narrow. I was out for a lovely day, whichever day I took these ones, lots of rain. This is a shadow study that our HRM staff, the technicians, have done. Just again, to give an idea of, as proposed, the buildings as proposed, what kind of shadow would they give? And so they're done at, this one here is showing June 21st. So the summer solstice, so the shortest shadows of the year. So this would be at 9 a.m. in the morning and at 3:30 p.m. So we can go back and forth just a little bit there. So this would be the morning, and then the sun would come around to some of these houses and toward our street maybe a little, but in general, expected to be pretty small shadows at the sunniest day of the year. And then on the flip side, we give December 21st, the shortest day of the year, where the sun is much lower in the sky, so shadows are much longer. And you can see that in the morning, there would be fairly long shadows from these buildings, fairly long shadows also from the Wardour Center and other buildings in the area. And then the evening, casting shadow out towards Wardour Street. Now, we didn't have these before the PIM, but a lot of people were asking what would the shadow effects be. So that's just to give a sense. Again, December 21st at 9 in the morning and December 21st at 3:30 p.m. So from 9 a.m., the shadows, as the day goes, would roll this way, but get shorter and then get lengthened again towards the evening. So I'm going to try to wrap it up here. The planning questions that we have, and we can answer as many questions about this as you like, and I'll leave the committee to decide how they'd like to deal with their comments, but these are what I have questions about, if you will. How does the committee or members feel that the existing mix of buildings impact the character of Dartmouth Road? And how do the existing buildings impact the overall neighborhood? And how does council best balance the needs and desires of this neighborhood with the high demand for housing in HRM? And finally, what does context-sensitive design and acceptable transitions look like on and near Dartmouth Road? So the next steps in this process after the committee meets, staff's going to take some time to continue our review, and we'll be drafting a staff report with recommendations That will go to the Northwest Community Council. They will consider staff's recommendation, what they've heard at the PIM, what this committee has said, and we'll make a recommendation to regional council, who are the final decision maker. So thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I know that's a lot, and I respect that you've heard that before, but hopefully everyone is now on the same page and happy to discuss whatever you'd like about the project.
Okay, thank you. And we will go through our members and poll them for comments and questions. And I'm looking right now to see if did Stacy Rudderham come back? I think she was having internet troubles as well.
I am here again. I'm
You're
on
there.
a
Okay.
unstable internet connection.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to call on you first for your questions or comments regarding this item.
Would it be okay if I deferred to later in the lineup, just because I sort of joined about halfway through Sean's presentation?
Okay, but it was pretty much, yeah, you were at the other meetings though, right?
Right. I'm trying to just
Okay,
sort
but
of catch
I
up on
will
things.
defer you to a little later on if you like.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, then we will move to Jacqueline Levert.
Hi. I imagine Sean is still with us.
Yes.
Okay. Sean, I wonder if you could stop your presentation. I don't know if that's possible, or I should ask the chair. I can't see anyone else.
Yeah, if you could clear the screen with you're still sharing.
I will work on that. Just give me 2 seconds to figure out how.
So
I can't help you. So
my first question,
there you
Sean.
go.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
My first question, and this has been frustrating for me because we keep talking about the 4 planning documents that are sort of, I guess, in opposition to each other in some aspects.
Yeah.
I would love to know the years next to the documents at any point in another presentation where we are dealing with this, because it helps to put a context as to when certain bylaws were put in place, and is it time for those bylaws to be, brought to 2021, or, like I'm thinking that the integrated mobility plan is in the last 5 years or so. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
And the HRM regional plan is maybe in the last 10?
Yeah. If you give me 2 minutes, I can get you exact dates on those documents and Bedford as well. So the regional plan is originally from 2006, and my apologies, I should have mentioned this. 2006 was the original regional plan, readopted with some modest changes in 2014, and currently also under review again. So that's a relatively new plan. The integrated mobility plan, I will find the date, but yeah, it's within the last couple of years.
That's close enough.
Okay, and Bedford was 1996 that was last fully adopted. The major changes to Bedford since then were in the 2000s, but they were for Bedford West, Bedford South. So you think of Larry Utek Boulevard, Hammond Plains area. They didn't make major changes or reviews since then.
Okay, that helps. Thank you so much. Can I ask a second question, Chair?
Yes, certainly.
So my second question is about traffic. So it's one of those central to some of the, not all of the complaints, but some of them. I know that traffic lights need to be a certain distance from one another. Is there, is there a possibility? I'm not asking you to tell me, but is Wardour far enough from the lights at Bedford Highway that if there was a consideration for a traffic light at Wardour or another area in that area, is it far enough in with the traffic laws or whatever, that there could be one at some point.
Give me 2 seconds, if you will. I'm going to take a look for the distances here and also think about that. So
Just there's a chance.
the difficulty with traffic lights, and this is something that an answer that we give, which frustrates people. So the authority for traffic signals for those sort of things is the HRM Traffic Authority, which is one of our engineers designated by council. And so to put in a set of lights, the question of whether it's too close would go to them as well. But the question of whether it's warranted would go to them as well. And I'm not going to comment on that, except to say that there have been warrants done. So it's a review of volumes, and it's not very close, is my understanding. The problem is, if you want to look at it one way, is there's a very large volume of traffic on Dartmouth Road. And if you were to stop that traffic even for a small amount of time, you could conceivably create a lot more backup around the Sunnyside Mall area to let maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people out of the streets there, Wardour and the one directly across from it. So those are the kind of things that the traffic authority would look to balance. The very, very high volume versus side streets that are inconvenienced, if you will, by the heavy volume. And yeah, so the other thing key is that the planning department doesn't make the call, and neither does council. It's the traffic authority. So a condition of any approvals or any changes, we can't make traffic lights or any other changes a condition, if you will.
Thank you. That helps. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Gina Jones-Wilson is next on my list.
Hi, my biggest concern is the character of the community. I was thinking, I know, Sean, that you said something in regards to having townhouses as an option. I'm thinking that the people in the area may be more favorable to that versus having a large apartment building in your backyard. And I know there is concern all over HRM with a housing crisis, but plopping quite of a large apartment building in the middle of a residential area, probably, yeah, I can see the backlash. So I'm thinking there's some other set of housing that could go in there that might, 50 kind of get some of what they're trying to look at without, disturbing, that setting that they have there in that. And it's not a large area, so that large of a building looks huge to the people. Like if you're out in Bedford South, you see those all the time, but that building in such a small area, which all single dwelling homes, it does look mammoth. It's not really, but it does in the setting. So to me, it's, it's around the character. Is it taking, people are moving there to get away from those settings. So now we're changing. We're not changing, it would be up to council. So now things are changing. So that's where I'm setting up. I'm kind of on the fence.
Okay. And that's it for you, Gina? Okay, we'll move along then to Jordan Foster.
All right, yeah, just going back to character. So I know the elevation drawings we saw are probably pretty preliminary, but to me, they didn't really match the character at all. So based on that, they're not suitable, but if there's another design, then sure, perhaps that could be entertained. With respect to, I think zoning is probably the wrong word, but like the usage, the one that wasn't zoning, where it's just residential versus commercial. So that one, there's 2 pieces of land marked on the map that were hatched out in red. The one that was kind of shaped like a 7, like on bordering both Wardour and Dartmouth Road. So if it were up to me, I would keep that as a residential single use, because I think that would fit the character better. But the other one across the street where the library is, that could probably be zoned commercial and still fit in if there was like small shops or whatever, seeing as there's a library right next to it and a parking lot. So you'd basically just be turning a parking lot into a commercial area or residential multi-use if we wanted to go back to the townhouse thing. So I think there's some options there on Wardour Street, like on that one lot, but the other lot, I would only recommend that was a residential single use to stick with the theme of the rest of the block pretty much. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, and Nick Horn.
Hi, I don't really have any questions. I just want to say that I'm in agreement that it should stay single use or townhouse maximum. I joined this committee because something threatened my enjoyment of my neighborhood, and it brought me here to kind of try and help other people have that not happen to them. And I see this building as it's too large. People moved into that community with the assumption that it would be single family homes, and I don't think that we should be changing from that zoning.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Okay, I'm going to go back to Stacy. Are you ready to give us your questions or comments now?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for all of the technical issues for me tonight. And I don't have enough stability in my connection for camera, so I apologize for not being on camera.
Thank you.
I agree with some of the other comments regarding the desired retention of character in the community. I think that single-use townhomes, development there in that particular neighborhood would probably fit much better than an apartment building. I too joined just due to some frustrations with the way that things get changed up from the plan and from the zoning in order to accommodate particular sites. And I think that some of the comments that I've read that were submitted, as well as the ones that we heard in the meetings, referred back to the need to sort of stick with the plan. And if there are going to be major changes, that they shouldn't be piecemeal, because that makes it harder and harder to come up with a larger scale plan for the area. And every time we make these little amendments or little zoning changes for specific sites, we make it maybe a little more prone to making those changes happen more often. And it changes the character, it changes the desirability for a neighborhood and a community. And I think too that it is so important to listen to the residents who live there as to their concerns, as to their existing knowledge of what some of the issues are that they're facing and what they're worried about with regard to increased traffic, with a lack of sidewalks, with the fact that there's a school there. There were some concerns about the erosion and so on with the brook nearby, and where was the water coming from another development, and that issue hasn't been fixed by HRM. And one of the main things that stood out for me was some of the comments about becoming a little bit disenfranchised with the process in HRM. Some of the residents are really not sure that their voices mattered at all in this process, and that's pretty problematic to me when it comes to living in HRM and voting in HRM. And I think that's something that kind of influences my judgment on whose voices really should matter a lot, and that is the locals who live there, who have invested in their homes there, and that community has been developed for well over 100 years now. So we're looking at a lot of history, and some of it's people that have lived there over generations. Some of it's people who have sought out that particular style of community. So I think that their voices should matter an awful lot. And it seems to me that there's an overwhelming objection to this change. And I think maybe we can do a little bit better with zoning issues and planning issues if we really start to take this on a larger scale. There are a lot of areas in Bedford that have room for apartment buildings. I just don't know if we need to cram one in right there next to all these smaller homes and single-use properties. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Okay, Kathy Diggle-Gammon. See, I didn't say councillor that time.
That's great. Thank you, Madam Chair. First question I would have maybe for Sean. Sean, when you talked about the next steps being after this meeting, the staff come and write a report, it's presented at the Northwest Community Council, and then whatever recommendation goes to Regional Council. So at Northwest Community Council, do the members of the public have another opportunity to speak to this? Or have the 3 public hearings, has that been it?
The community members will have a chance to speak at a public hearing. There is, I'll
So there
defer
will be
to
another
clerks.
public hearing?
What's that, sorry?
So there will be another public hearing at the Northwest Community Council?
The public hearing will be at Regional Council.
Oh, it'll be at
That'll be
regional.
after Northwest Community Council. Yeah.
Okay, good. I was trying to figure out if there was one more opportunity that people may be able to speak their minds to council. Good. Okay. So I guess building a little bit, I don't disagree with anything so far at all in terms of the comments from my colleagues. On slide 31, when it talks about the traffic, because I do think the traffic is a huge concern, we have 51 units and they're like the minimum peak times in and out seems really low to me. And I don't know how engineers come up with these numbers, but if you got 51 units and you think only 10 people are going to be leaving at peak times in the morning, that it just doesn't make sense to me. So maybe you could, maybe through the course of this, I'll get a better education, but yeah, to the lay person, that just doesn't compute at all. So I have a question about that. Building a little bit on what Stacy said, I think when we listened at the public hearings, there was quite a strong voice to think that this should be considered as a heritage district. And if it's considered as a heritage district, then what are the implications on that around planning and development and what may or may not happen? And I know that the regional plan review we're looking at, because right now heritage designation seems to reside more in the urban core. And so outside of the urban core, how do we look at heritage designations? And so, sometimes I'm wondering if this is the cart before the horse, because we make these recommendations, but we know that there may be changes coming down the pike in the next, 3 to 6 months. And so retroactively, we can't come back and change anything. So, I don't know if we can pause this study area or not, but I do think the concern around a heritage district designation should be something that we, strongly apply to this study area. That should be important to us. The other thing that we talk about is, what is also a good fit when we're looking at land use bylaws and municipal planning strategies. Absolutely, there is a housing crisis, and we have a lack of inventory in HRM, all of those kinds of things. But do you plunk density in a very residential community that, moved there because of the Bedford planning strategy, because they saw that Bedford planning strategy as a protection for this nice community that they bought into? So I think I'm a little concerned about that. It's not the fit. I think it was Jordan that said, one building commercial and then the other one, maybe the residential, we can't split the study area, but it does seem that one development in one site maybe could be looked at a little bit differently. And, when we were doing the public hearings and some of this stuff, we saw that the stacked townhouses, we saw some different options around townhouses that would have more of a neighborhood feel. So I think that that's something that we should really think about when we're talking about recommending this, or what kind of a recommendation or report gets written. The other thing that was, Jacqueline, I was so happy to hear you ask about the traffic lights, right? So sugars, wouldn't it be great if we had a little bit of, right in that we need to have it. So that's because, one area, 460, 400 odd cars, and another one, 500. That's not a small volume coming out from, a small little community out onto the Dartmouth Road. If I lived there, I think I would be concerned about that with the lack of sidewalks. It's not really as walkable a community as you would like. It also doesn't have a lot of green space. So, you plunk that density and you got no green space, and it's not walkable for people. So I think those are really things that we should be thinking about as well when we talk about what do we recommend for this study area and how it should be, how does it become a really good community fit? I know that there was something else on my mind, and Madam Chair, maybe if I can remember it, you'll let me come back if I have another set of questions. How's that?
Okay, I will now then go to Councillor Oatit.
Thank you, Chair.
For his
Thank
comments.
you, Chair. And I want to start by thanking the committee, first of all, for what you went through in 3 nights of PIMS there. Normally that would have been done in 1 night, it would have been done in person, but for volunteers to give up 3 nights, and most of you were there too, if not 3 nights, was very much appreciated by me and by your chair, and of course by the community. And Kathy, I also want to thank you because you've been sitting in on a lot of meetings with me, with the developers, with planners, etc., trying to deal with a very controversial and difficult scenario here. And I think you looked at it as a learning experience for you, but I also appreciate what you brought to the table as well. So thank you. I live close to this area. My wife's nearly been hit twice on the intersection of Wardour and the Dartmouth Road when walking our dogs. My girls went to Fort Sackville School. We walked almost daily on those streets. We used the library. We shortcut through those streets when Dartmouth Road is backed up at Sunnyside. Now, the folks listening won't be happy to hear that, but we're all guilty of that. And as Sean explained very well, we cannot, or I would do it in a heartbeat, put traffic lights at that intersection or a roundabout. I cannot force them to put in sidewalks. I cannot force them to put in speed bumps. I cannot force them to do a 4-way stop, et cetera, part of this exercise. This is for the statutory position of the traffic authority, which under provincial law, the traffic authority is independent of council. The CAO can't tell them what to do. The mayor can't tell them what to do. And people don't realize this, and it's very frustrating to all of us, but a unanimous vote of mayor and council cannot put a stop sign, a no parking sign, a traffic light, or a speed bump up in any municipality in Nova Scotia till it has met with the approval of the appointed traffic authority for that municipality. And they use, as Sean described very well, nationally accepted warrants. So when folks say, well, wouldn't that be great, Tim? And I listen, that intersection has been evaluated so many times during my time on council. It took us 15 years to get it out of Ridgevale on the Dartmouth Road. Can you imagine 245 houses coming out of Ridgevale trying to turn left to go to work in the morning up over Magazine Hill? And how many times we had accidents or had our life in our hands and our children going across the street to go to that Fort Sackville school. We finally got traffic lights there, which are one of the leading candidates for red light cameras because people don't like to stop when they don't think that traffic lights are warranted. So this is another problem that our traffic engineers have. If a stop sign or a traffic light isn't busy, and as Sean said, if they're not cars coming out of those side streets very often, people ignore them and they run through them. If anybody lives on Basin View Drive and know how, or Bedford Hills Road, Flamingo Drive, whatever, know how many times people blow through those stop signs because they really aren't warranted. So that's the challenge that I've had with trying to deal with the concerns that folks have. The other thing is a tremendous amount of shortcutting. You talked about turning left coming out of Wardour to go towards Sunnyside. One of the biggest problems now, in addition to the school traffic and the library traffic, is people coming down Dartmouth Road, turning left onto Wardour to avoid going through Sunnyside at rush hour. So that traffic, and it's unfortunate, Sean, and I have a question for you after. I'd like to see if we could get the stats for Wardour, because I can guarantee you that there are more cars on that street than on those other streets, and I can guarantee you they're going faster. Having lived here for 21 years and walked on that street almost daily. And folks are concerned that everybody coming out of those apartments will go down Wardour, go down to Shore Drive, turn right to go to the Bedford Highway, turn left to go up to Eaglewood and up to Magazine Hill to avoid that intersection, putting more traffic on Wardour Street. I believe that that's a legitimate concern based on living here for 21 years. The Heritage Conservation District, Kathy, I think you mentioned that. I've got that in the works. Council unanimously approved a motion that we would consider this area for a Heritage Conservation District. That will take 3 to 5 years. That will not help this present situation that we're doing right now. Why, just debating right now, why I brought that forward is because one of the major concerns we heard during the PIMS, and I've seen in surveys and phone calls and emails and whatnot, is creep or spread, this being the wedge, this being the tip of the iceberg, into other areas in this neighborhood. And if it is a heritage down the road designated a Heritage Conservation District, that will protect the areas around the graveyards, around Fort Sackville, the Andrew Cobb House neighborhoods, the heritage buildings on Perth Street, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a method in my madness why I brought that forward, but it will not be in time for us to delay this a few months or something like that while we look at this particular project that Sean has presented to us tonight. The other thing I have done, and this has been misinterpreted in the community, which is very unfortunate, and Sean, if you want to speak to this after as well, I proactively brought forward a motion that we consider zoning for Fort Sackville School, again, to oppose creep. Folks are worried that if there's apartment buildings on Wardour, apartment buildings on the corner of Wardour and Dartmouth Road, that it would be logical if the province and the school board someday declares Fort Sackville School surplus, that somebody will come along and want to put a 4 or 5 or 6 or 10-story building there as well, using the precedent setting of the other buildings. What I have asked council to do, and they approved it unanimously, was to put in residential zoning for the Fort Sackville School property, if or when it ever becomes surplus by the province or the school board and sold. The community seems to think that HRM or Outfit want to put houses or townhouses on the school property, and that is not the case. There is no rumors, there is no plan, there is nothing imminent. I am just trying to be proactive and preemptive of getting into this situation again with that property, and I've done a similar thing with the Raverley Road School, to keep it as an R2 neighborhood instead of perhaps some bigger high rises in there. Normally, I don't state my position as categorically bluntly as I will tonight, because we are supposed to be quasi-judicial, and we don't really, as councillors, Kathy, you would have taken this recently in your training, that we're not supposed to shoot our mouths off until the public hearing closes and we've heard from the people. But because of 3 PIMs, because of the library meeting that I've had with residents, because of the meeting with developers, because of the 103 surveys during COVID, all the things we've done virtually, I think I've heard from enough of the community to support Sean's comments that the community has grave concerns with what is being proposed here as far as zoning. We can't get focused on what the buildings look like. What we're discussing is how to zone this area. The buildings could change shape 1,000 times between now and the time that something is actually built or approved. But I have heard enough through those different sources to know that my residents have real concerns with any proposed zoning that would allow multis on Wardour or on the corner of Wardour and the Dartmouth Road. A couple of you mentioned townhouses. I've got myself in trouble with both sides on the issue. One of the things I've learned on 13 years as council, if I want to get council and community council support, we try and look like we've tried to be cooperative. We try and look at like we looked at options. We tried to look like we just didn't come in and act like NIMBYs. we saw this recently on Dunbrack Street, where the developer came back several times, made some changes, and the public was largely able, and then the council to accept that. I proposed the idea to both the developers and to local residents that we look at townhouses as a compromise between an R1 neighborhood and a 4 or 5 story building. Both sides have rejected that idea. The residents want me to roll the dice and say that it should remain status quo, R1 neighborhood, and the developers tell me that it is not financially viable, and they want me to roll the dice and go for multi zoning. So I don't think a compromise is likely in this case, and I don't know how that will play out at regional council, because as I've mentioned to a number of the folks in the area, my worry is that this kind of thing would happen in other parts of HRM, and I don't know if I'm going to have sympathetic support from urban councillors who say, well, if this was in Clayton Park, if this was on the peninsula, if this was in Dartmouth Outlet, if it was in the center plan, of course you'd have a 4-story building on Dartmouth Road, and of course you'd have townhouses on Wardour Street. You know, what are you talking about? I hope that's not the case. So I need your help. I need your help because my task is to go to community council and then to council and roll the dice and say that we should probably leave the zoning largely as it is right now. And that is going to be a hard sell at a time when we need housing and at a time when other areas of the city probably would accept this type of growth. I believe that the residents have some legitimate concerns about this location, and I do believe that down the road, a portion of this area will become a heritage conservation district, but not in time for this project. So I think I'm going to ask for your help. And you've done that tonight, supporting the residents, and Sean and Ann. This is a little different because we're not going to recommend for or against in this. This isn't a building. This isn't a DA. We're providing, to some extent, guidance to Sean on what the zoning should be here. Mm-hmm. And is there transition enough that there be a multi there versus a townhouse versus an I? Does it consider the context of the neighborhood, the traffic concerns, whatnot? So I'm not quite sure how we're going to frame motions in this case, but I am going to be looking for your support to help me with my colleagues when I go to my colleagues, say that the people in this area have some legitimate concerns about multis. And Sean, the other question, I think we have talked, in addition to adding the school area in with zoning to preempt any going through this again down the road, we'd also talked about taking the area out of the plan that goes on the right when you go up North Street, that sort of Green Hill. And I think we had talked about perhaps taking that even out of the study area. So I'm wondering if any comment from the committee on that would be helpful. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Madam Chair, and to Sean, because I think you know where I stand on this, but I'm going to need some help. And I think we're all going to need some help how we actually formulate all this into some kind of a statement.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I all along have been struggling with this simply because my first thought before I heard from anybody was that's not a logical place to put multiple use buildings, simply because I don't live in Bedford, but I've driven over that hill and I know what the traffic is like. I've gone into Dartmouth early in the mornings and I will sometimes go over that hill. And it just doesn't compute with me that that would be a logical place to put a big building with a lot of apartments in it. But it's not that big. I know it's not the biggest building in town. It's not got the biggest number of apartments in town, but for that area, I just cannot see it being a good idea. The people, they've said why they don't think it's a good idea. With me, it was strictly on the basis of the traffic that is on that hill to begin with. And how it gets to that hill, I don't know, but anybody who's going that way is has got to eventually go up the hill. And yeah, they might be able to drive around and get to it from another angle, but they're still going to be on that road. Yeah, I am not in favor of the plan as it stands right now. If there can be another way to handle it, well and good, but I don't think I like the idea of 2 multiple unit buildings right there. And Councillor Gammon, did you come up with the other thought you had? No? Okay.
No,
You can
actually, I think Tim pretty much hit on what I might have been thinking as an extra thought. So all good.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. I think we do have to make some sort of a motion.
Madam Chair. There were
Yes.
a number of questions in there. I'm assuming they're for me. Would you like some?
Oh, hold on. I'm not saying anything
Oh,
on my chat.
spoken there, unless they didn't sound rhetorical to me. So
Sorry, Madam Chair, I did ask Sean a couple of things about the school zone and the green.
Okay.
You wouldn't mind. Yeah.
I thought he meant in the chat. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes. You can answer those.
also, if I could have my my screen sharing, that would be great. So I'll go back to some of the maps. If that's oh no. Aha.
You should have access now.
Great, thank you, Krista. So
You're
I heard
on
a
the
couple from Councillor Deagle Gammon as well. So actually, this is where it starts, the question of trips and trip generation. I will preface this part by saying that I am not a traffic engineer or a transportation engineer. What is done for these trips are, you'll see here, specialty retail use code 826, mid-rise apartment, land use 223, etc. So what the engineers do is there's large manuals that would be kind of yay big or bigger, and they list dozens, hundreds of different uses. And what the manuals have done is they've gone out and sampled different buildings all across generally North America, and they've come up with, in the AM peak, this is in, this is out, based on the apartment, and you multiply the units by the ratio. And you can see the trip generation rates right there. So that's where you get that idea. That's how it works.
May I ask, what year would that manual be done and how often is it updated with current data sets?
I don't know.
Okay.
The validity of this model and this approach is quite controversial.
Okay.
And in general, the worry from I guess what you might call more progressive transportation engineers is, or planners. I'm not an engineer. My concern, and other people share this concern, is that this actually, in many cases, overestimates the number of trips. Surprisingly, we're only looking at the AM and PM peak. And one thing to think about is, even though the AM peak and the PM peak tend to be extremely congested on our roads, the actual difference in the volume on the roads isn't as much as it seems. Many trips happen outside the AM and PM peak, but they don't bump over into the really congested territory. And if you think of a big city like Toronto, picture Highway 401 congested 18 hours a day. That kind of gives you a sense that once you reach a certain amount of trips, you're just congestion all the time. So they're always congested. So that the peak isn't actually as huge as you might think. It's definitely bigger and definitely significant. I will say that we generally don't have, communities generally look at this and say what you did. How is that possible? 10, 15 trips. And it's difficult because I don't go out and check if there's 10 or 15 trips afterwards. This is the tool. In a lot of cases, what this helps us to do, there's other information in here that also helps our engineering department look at driveway location, site distance, and things like that. So this is only one part of it. I brought it up because there's been a lot of questions and it does provide some context. I don't have the exact wording, but the conclusion from this, the engineering's words would be that this is not going to have a significant impact. 51 units seems like a lot, but, and I would suggest this for many developments, most of this traffic is not local. This is coming from across Bedford, possibly from Sackville on Wardour Street. So Wardour Street's very busy. The local traffic is a small percentage of that. The Heritage District, sorry, there's a bunch of questions here that I wrote down, so I'll go through these if you don't mind. The Heritage District, Councillor Outhit spoke to that. That's a longer term project. The options, I will go through some of these if this helps the committee a bit. I'll start here actually. So is this showing up saying mix and match?
Yes.
Okay. Within the study area, there's no real need to do one thing. We could do different things. Staff could recommend different things. Council could do different things for different lots. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing for apartments, all or nothing for towns, all or nothing for status quo. So I think that's important for the committee to keep in mind. Someone mentioned stacked townhouses. Definitely a much more urban form than residential single unit, but smaller buildings. And there's another, these are things that I put in case people kind of asked about them. There's other options, what's called missing middle housing, generally looking at buildings closer to a house size with multi-units. That could be a potential option. It's not within our marching orders from council, but should council tell us to go look at that, that would definitely be something. And then there was one question about the study area, I believe. I might have missed some. There's a fair number, but I'm going to go back to the study area. So actually, I'm going to go to a different one, excuse me. So two things to point out. So there are some commercially zoned properties within the study area already, and we put them in the study area to take a look. To be upfront about that, we recommended that for a variety of reasons. So they have different policy set from the residential nearby, and those two properties, which being the Wardour Center and the three properties, excuse me, they front right on Dartmouth Road. They have a different policy approach. They've never been single family, and they've never been zoned single family or designated single family. So that's critical. Still in the study area, but not anything proposed on them. And then I think Councillor Outhit was asking, could we just take all of this by North and Dartmouth Road out of the study area? We certainly can. Council would have to tell us that. But there's no need to rezone the whole study area at this time or at all. Or parts of the study area at all. So I think that's the only questions I think I heard. There was some commentary that might have been questions. If that's the case, just let me know again. I'll see what I can do. So,
Sean, maybe the school property. It's Tim. Just what led me to bring that
Yes.
forward.
So, yeah, and so Councillor Outhit let us know that he was going to move a motion to explore rezoning the school through this process. And the understanding that I have, and it makes sense, is that people are worried that if the school comes up for sale, or when, depending on how they look at it, then we'll go through all this process all over again, and developer might be proposing a 4 or 5 story apartment building on the school. So if we pre-zone it to something else, which could be townhouses, could be single family, could be duplexes, then what would happen is, should the school close, then HRM has to look at the site and declare it surplus. And if they declare it surplus, then they'd sell it. And real estate, corporate real estate from HRM would just try to sell it as an R2 or R1 or R whatever zone property. So then there would be no question of an apartment building, because we'd be selling what in the end would be a vacant, remediated, cleaned up piece of land with the zoning, and any potential developer would just buy it for that use, if that makes sense. And again, we suggested that be rolled in this process because we're already looking at things in this area. So to start a whole other process would literally add 6 months, whereas a motion could do it in an afternoon. So.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Chair.
And I think
Okay.
there's some hands up still for questions, I believe.
I'm not seeing any. I'll go through again. Jordan, do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. Nick,
No questions.
Stacy,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sean, one of the things that we're talking about is this site-specific amendments and so on. And in a lot of the comments and submissions from the residents, they talk about the municipal plan and the Bedford strategy and so on, having prohibitions about, against site-specific rezoning. Can you speak to that, like the legal questions that were raised there were quite a few of them submitted or brought up by residents? And I know you talked about the conflict with the different planning documents, but I'm just curious what you can tell us about the legal element with regard to site-specific amendments.
Madam Chair, if there is legal staff on the line, going to defer to them on this question to start.
I don't
Krista,
think we
do we have legal?
do have. But if you can just answer the question quickly, because I want to get to everybody else,
Yeah.
and we're running low on time here.
Yeah, through the chair to the committee. Yeah, we've seen those, and respectfully, my understanding is we are following a process to change policy, and governments have the ability to change their laws and their policy, provided they do so properly. So my understanding is we're following the proper procedures, and essentially we will be changing some of those policies in the Bedford Bedford municipal planning strategy.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, is that good for you, Stacy?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted some clarification from the other side, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will go then to Jacqueline. Do you have any further?
I'm just wondering what the process is here. Do we since there's a report coming from staff on this and they're not done going through it, are we really supposed to make a recommendation tonight until all that information is computed and put together and we get a staff? I'm just wondering about the process from here on in.
So I'll take a crack at that. What the committee does tonight is the committee's choice. The committee is a body that recommends. And so I'm not sure what would happen if the committee doesn't give a recommendation. I don't believe it can move forward to Northwest Community Council. That's my thought. That being said, so when I say we have to go review, so we are not, staff, just to be perfectly clear, staff is not bound by what the committee recommends tonight. Staff is not bound by what the proponent has proposed, what the public has said. Staff has to sort through all this and come up with a recommendation. That being said, I'm very interested in what the committee has to say, and we definitely take that into account. Part of what we have to review is, so if we were to take an approach and say, why? That's not enough to get a building built or a zone changed or a policy written, whatever it is. So a lot of our work actually is producing the policy and the regulations to make whatever why is or not. So we would have to build a full set of potential changes to the bylaw and MPS, then report on it, and then send it on. So that's kind of where we would be. If there's an analogy would be, so for the one we just saw, which was a development agreement, you folks haven't seen the full 28-page legal development agreement, but you did provide your input. So my colleague will go off and, among other things, draft the development agreement. So the analogy for me would be, I'm going to go out, if there's changes we're recommending, we have to go actually draft them up, would be one of the big steps, if that helps out.
Thank you.
Okay. Gina, do you have any other comments you'd like to make or questions?
No, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Councillor Diggle Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I look at the 3 bulleted questions, HRMR planning questions, when I look at that slide, like I would say that the existing mix of buildings that we're looking at in this concept negatively impacts the character of the neighborhood, and that the neighborhood lacks the infrastructure to support that kind of density. And then the other thing I would say is that acceptable transition for that community on or near Dartmouth Road would be more acceptable to be residential, single use, or townhouse type development. Does that help in terms of trying to answer the questions in a positive way?
That's kind of what we're hoping for. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good start. I would add that because we have a study area, there are different sites. So if there is thoughts on the different sites, being directly on Dartmouth Road, to my mind, is different than being on Wardour Street and closer in a neighborhood, things like that. There's also the commercially zoned and existing properties are zoned for commercial. They're in the study area too, that we could look at those as well. So there's those other couple of properties, but broadly, yes, that's the kind of thing that Northwest Community Council and staff would be chewing on and looking for some thoughts.
And I think perhaps Jordan, you had really good language around in that study area, looking at some of the commercial that was right on Dartmouth Road. So I think that looking at what was residential, staying residential, and commercial on Dartmouth Road, maybe there's something there that could be scoped out. But that definitely and I would say like the infrastructure doesn't support it because of the traffic concerns, because of the lack of a walkable community that is safe, all of those kinds of things. So that's why, oops, here's my train. So that's why I was thinking that the language of the infrastructure doesn't support the density. So those would be my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Tim, if you can be a little bit briefer than the last time.
I thought you were going to say you're going to give me more time.
No.
So listen, thank you. And Sean, I mean, could a recommendation be a consideration that we actually remove that area that I highlighted? And I don't know what you want to call that area. I call it the Green Hill to the right of North Street. But if the committee voted in favor of my suggestion here, could we make a recommendation that council remove that from the area? People were quite concerned about their existing property and the lines and where the zoning would impact them and this sort of thing. So I'd like to see that removed. Do you need any recommendation from us on the school or the Heritage Conservation District? Could we add our support for that if we wanted to? Would that be within reason as well?
I would suggest not saying much about the Heritage District because that's a very set process. It does take a lot of study. The school, I think, yeah, if there's a desire. What I would suggest for that area bounded by Main Street, North Street, and Dartmouth Road would broadly just suggest just that council make no changes to the zoning.
Okay. Yeah.
'Cause it's in the
I would like to add that to a motion. Obviously, we're going to have to go through and vote on this, but if I could put that as a condition, if you will, on our comments, I would appreciate that, Madam Chair. And that's a lot briefer this time.
Okay, so I've already said what I had to say, and I'm pretty sure that everyone has made all the comments that need to be made tonight. So I'm going to ask someone to make a motion in the form of a recommendation, I guess, but it has to be a motion to what we would prefer for that area. I don't care who makes it.
Madam Chair, I think the problem with that, and I think that's what Sean was, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that's where Sean was heading. While it's one area, there's so many differences within the area, and I don't know what level.
Well,
of
I think though we're recommending based on the proposal.
Okay.
Is that right,
Does that
Sean?
help you, Sean? Or do need it broken down by-
You had some questions that you wanted the committee to answer based on the proposal that you presented, right?
Yes, and thoughts on the other commercially, the Wardour Center and the other commercial, thoughts on that would be good too.
Yeah, okay.
If the committee broadly says X is good or X is not good, then I will assume they mean the whole study area unless told otherwise. But if there's specific instructions, great. If not, that's okay too.
Okay. All right. So do we understand where we are there then?
Madam Chair, Sean, would it be helpful if we recommended this, just for a straw man here to put it up, that we recommend the status quo be maintained and that the area that you just described, Maine and Dartmouth, well, that's maintained, that'd be status quo as well, wouldn't it? So are we giving you enough help if we just say maintain the status quo and make the school part of this project? Does that give you enough direction?
Got to think about this one for a second. If that's the direction, then yes. If that is the committee's desire, then we will consider that and council will consider that. If the status quo or something very close or the entire status quo is the desire, then that is the committee's recommendation. Absolutely.
All right, I'll
Okay.
throw that out and as a recommendation, as a motion. We'll see if anybody seconds it and everybody wants to debate it.
Okay, that we maintain the status quo. Basically, what we're doing is rejecting the proposal. And then we can give reasons to answer Sean's questions that he proposed. So,
Which is what Kathy did quite well, yeah.
Yeah, I would second that, Madam Chair.
okay, well, I would like to know what reasons we want to put in there. To that it doesn't fit with the community structure.
Yes,
Uh,
that it lacks the infrastructure to support the proposed density.
lacks
Transportation.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
The study area cuts off the properties on that Green Hill portion, that it cuts through current property areas.
Okay. The study area is not consistent. Is that?
Something like that.
That's not the wording.
It's not specific to properties. It's, I don't know how to word that, but
No, I don't either. It maybe overlaps. No, I don't know how we can put that in there, but okay.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I wonder if we just said that the study area is not fully considerate of the area. because it really doesn't encompass the whole area.
Okay. Considered of the entire area. Okay. And then we will, what we're saying is, help me someone. Krista, how are you for wording?
Oh, sorry, what are you trying to achieve in terms of this particular?
Well, we're trying to say basically that we feel it should not go ahead.
Yep.
And giving reasons for that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I recognize that. I more meant around the study. Are you still on the study area trying to formulate that wording?
Well, that would be maybe one of the reasons that we would add in there, but the main things are that the area lacks the infrastructure to
It lacks the infrastructure to support the proposals.
That's it.
Yeah. Madam Chair,
Right.
it's Alicia. I've got a couple of notes here. So
Okay.
if you guys use your standard wording, it seems like you're going towards rejection. So what we would have so far is that the Northwest Planning Advisory Committee has reviewed the application for case 22267 and recommends rejection of the application due to the lack of infrastructure to support the proposed density. The proposal does not suit the existing neighborhood character, and the study area is not fully considerate of the whole area.
Okay, how does that sound?
I think it's Tim per second. I think that's good, although I don't know that it's right to call this an application per se, because it's, again,
Proposal. We can change application.
Yeah, because what Sean is trying to do is get us to comment on what zoning should look like in the area rather than what do we think of these two buildings.
Yeah, so this would be a proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Sean, you could just tell us, does that give you what you need? Or we're used to having an application. I wouldn't call this an application.
Right.
No, this one's certainly different. So I think both will know what you mean. We've got the discussion, either the proposals or proposals to change the zoning in the study area should be rejected.
I like that.
I think where you're going, you want to mention don't do zoning changes if that is the will of the committee.
I think that's what we're looking at.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to answer an email there. It was important. Yeah. I think that is where we're going with this. And Alicia, could you read that, what you already said, so just so it's clear in everybody's mind, and add anything that Tim just threw in there?
Yep, just give me one quick second, please.
Yeah. These are the difficult ones that we run into sometimes, but okay.
Okay, so that the Northwest Planning Advisory Committee has reviewed the proposals for case 22267 and recommends rejection of the proposals to change the zoning in the study area due to the lack of infrastructure to support the proposed density, the incompatibility with the existing neighborhood character, and that the study area is not fully considered of the whole area.
Okay. If everybody's happy with that, would somebody please put their name to that motion?
I'm happy to
Madam
move
Chair,
it. Maybe you would like to, that's fine. Sorry, Nick.
Madam Chair, is there merit in us adding a line that says specifically not to change the zoning as suggested? I think that there is merit personally.
I think that's what we said, that we rejected any change to the zoning. Did we not?
Okay.
Yeah, it says recommends rejection of the proposals to change the zoning in the study area due to.
Okay.
I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Tim, were you going to move that motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to move it. Just one little further question. Sean, does that, to say that we're recommending not change any zoning, that doesn't mess up what I'd want you to do with the school, does it? Because I do want us to put zoning in there so somebody can't come and build a building. Does that still give you latitude to do that?
I think you'd want
This
to make it,
isn't mine either, but you know what I mean.
add a line about the school if you want changes at the school. Because
Okay.
otherwise you said don't change zoning. So if that's,
Yeah,
just
okay.
clarify it with a line on the school, if that's the goal.
Is the
Okay.
school in the study area?
Is it,
It was
yeah,
added to the study
Actually,
area.
the school, yeah, it was added to the study area. So I guess we could say with the exception of the Fort Sackville School area.
Yes.
okay.
I just don't want to tie your hands at all. When we, I know this isn't binding, but I do want us to pursue this preventative zoning.
The fact is that we're making a recommendation that's going to go to another committee, that's going to go to another committee.
Right. I'm happy to move that then, Ann, if that helps us bring some closure here.
Okay. And can we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Madam Chair.
That was,
Councillor Daigle Gammon.
okay, moved by Councillor Otit, seconded by Councillor Diggle Gammon. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded?
I'd like to abstain if I could.
Wait till we finish this. Contrary minded? Motion is
Ann?
carried. Yes.
On the point about abstaining, you cannot abstain. That would actually be a vote in the negative.
Oh, did somebody abstain? I didn't hear.
I believe,
That's a difficulty with this system.
Yes, it was me, and I was hoping to abstain, but I will not.
Okay, so you're voting.
I will vote in favor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then the motion is carried. And all we have to do now is we will ask the proponents who have been listening in to mute their or turn off their phones. And okay. Our next meeting, which I hope will be a little easier, will be the Northwest PAC Public Information Meeting on August 18th. That will be another virtual public information meeting, and we do need a quorum on August 18th. And our Northwest PAC meeting, our regular meeting, will be held on September 1st. I assume still virtually. And I will now ask you for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Tim.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Good night, all, and thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Good night. Thank you, Sean, for all your hard work.